There's a lot of different options. Simply actually even parents taking a photograph of something and sending it up. So I don't think handing anything in is really an issue. There's a lot of different ways that we can access that. We just talked about platforms being used. I don't want to bring some of those up again, but that speaks to the training that we're going to get at our Ed Camp, and then with Kirsten, that'll expand our knowledge of different platforms, some of which allows teachers to record themselves. And they're not necessarily recording themselves like up in front of the smartboard with no kids, but it's as if I'm recording my slideshow and me moving the mouse, making, mathematical operations, and then I'm voicing it over, which is a pretty neat one, Screencastify. And then there's a few others like that that we'll take advantage of. As for parent communication, it's kind of the same way as students submitting work. Obviously, it's emails, it's phone calls. We built in that time, like the win time for our teachers to make that contact and reach out. We also have each teacher sending out newsletters. And through Google Classroom, once the family has that routine of logging in, right at the top is that announcement bar where you might expect something like in the mail previously from your classroom about what's going on that week, but it's right there as soon as you log in. It's almost like your dashboard when you log into some sort of like mail program or your news program. So there's certainly a lot of different vehicles to get out there and message. Even on Google Classroom, there's back and forth individual messages. So if you want to establish correspondence that way, that's out there. All we've asked is that our teachers, once they find something that works for their families, that they just remain consistent with it and then keep up that communication. Something we don't want is, as a parent, not knowing, hey, do I have to email them here or make a note in a Google Classroom chat that's private? Just figure out what's going to work for your group of 18, 22 families, and then just stick with that. And then distribution and sort of that orientation. So first, we have the physical sense. We're going to combine our Chromebook distribution with sort of like a meet and greet. We're going to have the families drive up. We've talked with our custodians who are going to work as traffic control. And much like they did in the spring to pick up their belongings, we're actually going to hand out Chromebooks. And then each grade is handing out sort of like academic goodie bags with supplies, manipulatives, reading content, leveled text. There's also some not sort of gifts, but basically, yeah, like gifts. I won't spoil what they are, but for the kids to use on certain days to kind of feel a part of, the class and find that attachment. It'll be different for each grade, K1 too. And those are taking place later on this week. And so we've disseminated some of that information out, and we'll fine tune the times tomorrow and let families know specifically. But this way, the students will be able to have a face to a name. Their teachers are going to be the ones there, along with me and the rest of our staff, handing out those materials, those Chromebooks, along with everything else. So that's the physical sense of at least, all right, so we have we can see everybody face to face. And then the orientation. Teachers in a physical sense, they'll spend the whole first month, establishing a classroom culture and working on what that looks like and getting that buy-in. Obviously they're doing academics while doing that, but this is all brand new. So that first week, we talked about that schedule from 9 to 11:40, and then the 4 blocks from 12:20 to 3. But that's not my expectation for that first week. The first thing is, if I'm a parent, K3 or even K5, what does my kid have to do on Monday? Where do they need to be and at what time? And then ease into it. So you might have a shorter academic day those first couple of days because we're just trying it out. The teacher might actually say, all right, now from our morning meeting, we're actually going to meet Mr. Russell. And we're all going to click on this link right now, and our gym teacher is going to pop up, even though it's not, the gym special time that day. And so that's what we're going to work on over these next few days is, what do we want as a grade level, our sort of establishing of classroom culture, our orientating our parents and our kids to Google Classroom or Seesaw? What do we want that to look like? And make some deliberate, conscientious planning on that instead of just, dropping them in, because these are the students who had the least amount of training on Google Classroom or this sort of interface. So it's almost like two-part. It's the quick physical, hello, here's some neat stuff. You're going to use it with us. And then let's dig in and let's help through here. We've also talked about making, for the folks who are completely unfamiliar about Google Classroom, I'll probably put up some sort of like slideshow presentation that's basic, just a couple slides on if you're a parent. This is like how to get on Google Classroom, how to go to your classroom, how to go to your mail. I'll post it on the website. Simple like 4 or 5 slides, kind of as like a quick static tutorial. I'm not going to be live, but like here's how to do it. And I'm sure we'll get the same from our staff with the different little programs that they want to use. So any questions on the physical sort of meet and greet, or the how do we orientate our K3, K5 kids to this realm?
Thank you.
Okay.
I'm not sure if Tom cut out for a moment, so why don't we just go to Steve, middle school?
Wait, can I ask Mike, did you cover
Yeah.
like the workbook
Sorry.
thing? Did I just
Oh
miss
yeah. So thank you. Yes. So in the bags, for lack of a better word, of like all the manipulatives and things are the workbooks that you've seen go home in the past for math, for ELA, that sort of thing. So
Awesome. Thank you.
yep. We've also Tom and I have collaborated through this whole process kind of since I came aboard. So a lot of what we're saying is overlap of what's happening at Alden. We have made a K5 schedule. We do share some staff, so we have to collaborate in that way. And really, it's the same sort of message and the same sort of procedures going through. So
how much time is allocated for in teacher schedules for contact the students or parents? Or parents, I guess.
do you mean like in a remote day?
Yeah, if they sense there's things amiss, or maybe difficulty, or
Oh, all right. So how much time a day does a teacher have outside of when they're expected to
or
be
maybe
teaching?
a week, because
Like,
Wednesday's a little more fluid, I guess.
gotcha. Yeah. So Wednesday's fluid in the hybrid model.
Sorry.
Yeah. No, it happens to me all the time too. Wednesday is
Yeah.
in the hybrid, right? But
Yeah.
so if we look at their schedule, when they're not expected to be either whole class instructing or individual student instructing, let me just bring it up here. So there's like roughly about 90 minutes to honestly 2 hours, could be 2.5. It depends on the groups that day. If I did a lesson on inferring with our classroom text and I was supposed to see 3 kids or 3 groups, but I could tell from our class discussion that they have it. My check-ins may not be 15 minutes a group. They might be 5, or even less. So it's anywhere from like 90 to 2 hours.
So the prime way that parents get hold of staff is via email, or what?
I would say that's going to be the quickest, but there's definitely time in the day to pick up the telephone as a teacher. So if I'm a parent, shoot off the email, but then for our teachers, it's probably easier to say, okay, great, thanks for the email. Now I'm calling you because I can troubleshoot your issue on the phone instead of waiting to send an email, find out that's not exactly what you meant, come back. So
some folks expressed frustration last spring, I guess, about in that area. So
okay.
Although there were a lot of glowing things to say.
Yeah, I would say email. I mean, obviously you can always call. We're also, almost all of us are going to be in every day. So parents, for those who are listening, they can always call the office too, especially if they like don't know where to turn, or they're in a moment where they don't have their phone and they're like, I don't know who to email. Just call us and we'll point you in the right direction, or if we can't solve it ourselves. So.
All right, am I up?
Yep.
Thanks, Mike.
All right. So at
You-
this secondary level, obviously myself and Mr. Sipe have been working together on everything that we've been doing in preparation. But before I talk about what things are going to look like in distance, I want to talk about some of the things that are being done in preparation. So obviously our teachers have been coming together, and we've heard a lot about the Ed Camp that's going on, but also all of the collaboration that's been happening in these last few days. So to couple with that, some things that are happening at the middle school to prepare is that starting already tomorrow, our sixth grade families are going to be coming and are encouraged to come with their student for curbside pickup of, much like Mr. Sotero said, a goodie bag, coupled with some things like textbooks and a brand new Chromebook. So all sixth grade students are going to be receiving a Chromebook with a shell case on it. This Chromebook will follow all students from grade 6 all the way through grade 8. And then at that point, they would re-up and start that process all over again with a new Chromebook from the level of 9 to 12. So that is beginning tomorrow for our sixth graders. And then actually communication is going to be going out today as well to our 7th and 8th grade families because we are going to be doing pickup for those families for things like textbooks and any other items that our teachers have deemed essential or important for students to have at home during this time of remote learning. So our teachers worked in grade level teams today and also in their content areas to start to identify some of those things that are necessary for students to have at home along with their technology. So that's been a really positive form of collaboration that we've been seeing. On Thursday at 6 p.m., we are going to be having a student parent orientation for our transitioning sixth grade students. So what we're going to be seeing there is typically before school begins, our sixth grade families and their students come in and they get to tour the building and walk the building, get their schedules, play with the lockers. But unfortunately, in our current state, that's not an option. When we do come to a place of getting students back in the building, we are going to prioritize those sixth grade students and make sure that they do physically get in the building. But what we're going to be doing is setting up an orientation for those parents and their families, just to identify many of the things that we're going to talk about today with distance learning, but also all the other things that go into becoming a middle schooler from the elementary level, because that transition is absolutely important and vital. It's a huge social emotional shift for our students. So we want to make sure that we are doing that as well. Built in physically this year, we've shifted our focus based on the ever-changing world and the many different things of distance learning that we've seen. And we've actually altered our physical schedule. So one of the things that we did was because we know our sixth grade students are coming in, and obviously they've had that time of distance learning last year in fifth grade, but now even to start their sixth grade year, one of the things we wanted to do was to prioritize their social emotional well-being. And what we did is we took our Seminar 6 class. That's a class that's taught by our guidance counselor every year. And what we did is we moved that class up. It typically happens every other day on a semester basis, but we moved it to the beginning of the year. The idea is that we wanted to make sure that all of our students were taken care of. They got to know the guidance counselor. She's going to work on all the things she typically uses, character education, problem solving, becoming a middle schooler. But at the same time, she's also going to be there, and this is a class that actually runs at the beginning and very end of the day, to help our students with the many social emotional things that are going to come about here in these first 2 months of distance learning. So that's one thing we did physically to shift what we do at the middle school. Another thing we did is we shifted our typical enrichment and AIS services and combined them into what we call WIN. So that's our what I need period. So during that period, our core teachers, and we even have some special education teachers that are working in these WIN periods, are going to be using this time to provide not only AIS services, so for those students who struggle in math or English, but even in places like social studies and science, they're going to be there to provide those supports. But what's really great as well is they're also going to be in there to provide that enrichment. And we're currently working with our staff on defining exactly what that looks like. And we're going to be creating a way for teachers to be very flexible in the way in which they group kids and then prioritize whom they meet with and kind of span themselves out across all of the students that they can reach in those periods. So that's going to be a really positive thing where it fits into a student's schedule. It doesn't necessarily fit into every student's schedule. We know students have lots of different things going on all the time. But that is something we are looking to structurally put in place. That's going to be a little different than typical. We certainly are not going away from enrichment or our typical learning center AIS services, but at this time, it was really important that we met the needs of our students where they're at during these tough times. Any questions on kind of the precursors that have been going on prior to our start of distance learning that'll be next week?
So I mean, in general, do the parents know, my son or daughter is going to start at 8 o'clock. They're going to have homeroom or whatever we call it these days. Then they're going to have English with so-and-so.
Yep. So to answer your question, not to interrupt, that was actually the next part I was going to get into was actual student scheduling. So if you want, I'll just jump right into that.
Okay.
So an email went out last week to parents. It's also posted on the middle school website that identifies everything. It's an opening information. It describes things like this WIN class I'm talking about. It had the schedule for students that they are going to be following. So they're going to be following a 9 o'clock to 3:05 daily schedule that does follow their 9-period day. So the way that's going to look through distance, it's going to be a little different. And I think we've talked about this before, is that our teachers are going to provide 10 to 15 minutes of direct instruction for their class periods. At that point, they're going to use a gradual release for their students to let them go and begin to work on these items that that they're assigning. So today, part of the conversation was not only about how that gradual release will look, but we also talked about things like homework and being cognizant of the amount of work and the way in which we're assigning things, being very strategic. I use the term surgical in the way we look at our curriculum and we design and choose what we're presenting in those 10 to 15 minutes, and then how we're having students follow up with it. Because during this process, we are going to have students graded in the normal fashion that they would be in a traditional setting. So that is going to be the way our teachers are going to use that. So the platform that the majority of our teachers have been using and talking about utilizing is through Google Classroom. So much of the work today was our teachers actually aligning the way in which, as a team, that they share their information on their Google Classroom. So one great example is Team 6, for example. Today, they looked at the way in which they're going to share out their links to their students. And they started to begin to create some things to make it more uniform so that across that grade level, all students are seeing the link in the same fashion. And obviously the thought behind that is with uniformity comes a good regular schedule that students can create with their families to then be successful and get more of that targeted instruction. So in utilizing the Google Classroom, again, teachers would be meeting with students directly, teaching them directly, and then from there, they would be sharing out their information and then releasing students. Now, in that time they're releasing students, they will, however, have the availability to be there for their students for assistance. So if a student is struggling and they want to stay on for the 15 or 20 minutes that's left in the period, the teacher would be there to support them. But if you're a student who knows what you're doing or you feel confident and things are going well, you can leave that screen time, give yourself a breather, and then follow up with the teacher at a later date, maybe in your WIN period or at another time during the day. So that's some of the things that are going on in the student schedules. As far as submitting work, students would be using the Google Classroom. We also have a multitude of apps that we've identified that we are using, everything from Newsela to Quill, vocabulary.com, IXL, and the list just goes on and on and on and on. So one thing our teachers have been doing is kind of working together to make sure that, for lack of a better term, this bag of tricks is something that everybody is aware of and how they can utilize it. Elliot was in our faculty meeting today too. And of course, with all the current things we use, there's always other things out there as well. So we're also working not only hand in hand with Elliot in the technology department, as well as Kirsten, as well as Ms. Hernandez-Padala in the curriculum and instruction realm, to kind of streamline the different technological things we have at our arsenal and how we use them for our students. I'm trying to think of some of the other things. As far as parent communication, we're going to continue to use School Tool, but email is going to be at the center and at the hub of everything we do. On Friday, myself and Mr. Stipe are going to be creating digital orientations for our students that we're going to be recording and sharing out. Basically explaining the expectations of distance learning, talking about some of the tips, some of the tricks, some of the things we want them to keep in mind, things like looking at your email daily, because teachers now in distance learning, what we learned the last time is that we were able to really empower our students by emailing with them directly, and then utilizing parent emails as now a second level of communication. So, in the past, when we didn't have that access point, we added almost another level of tiered service for our students when we try to communicate with them. And of course, we're going to utilize the parents as well and connect everybody to make sure everybody is on the same page throughout their time in distance learning. Again, just to really clearly talk about the schedule and teacher and student expectations, it is a 9-period day that starts. The teachers have a full hour of collaboration time where they can meet with one another and align their curriculum, continue to talk about technology, co-plan with special educators. But also this is a time for them to even meet with students who want to be available a little bit earlier in the day if it suits them. The other thing is they then start their day with a check and connect time. So we actually rolled out at the middle school some of the different ways our teachers are going to check and connect. So we've taken every day and we made a mindful Monday and a let's talk about it Tuesday and what I need Wednesday and think about it Thursday. And they're outlined through our guidance counselor and our PBIS committee. So we've really tried to use that check and connect time, because one of the big things that we heard, or at least I know I heard in the social emotional from families was, my student missed their teacher, but it wasn't just that interaction they missed. They missed connecting with their friends. They missed that time to talk about their day. They missed that time. So we want to use that check and connect time to create those avenues for students to connect amongst each other as well. Trying to hit everything here. There's been a lot going on. Again, students and teachers will follow that 9-period schedule and then use that gradual release to get through the things that they need to complete on their own. And again, we're being very mindful of the amount of work that we're putting out there. I think that is the majority of the information I wanted to convey, unless we have any questions, or actually, I don't know if Mr. Syke wants to speak about anything a little bit more specific to the high school.
I could jump in with your permission, Laura. Okay, you're on mute, but I think I got a head nod. Awesome, thank you. So first, I just would concur that it was definitely a great first day seeing our faculty and staff at school today. At the high school, we're excited and ready to begin our work with our students. Similar to Mr. Sotero and Mr. Cabello, because a lot of it's, I feel it's going to be very repetitive. I'll just run through some quick bullet points in no particular order to discuss like student and teacher schedules, the distribution of Chromebooks and learning materials, orientation, and more. So I'll start with student schedules. All student schedules have been finalized and released to all of our students. Students will follow their traditional 9-period schedule. As in past years, some students have requested certain classes or electives that they can't necessarily get because of the number of singletons that we have at the high school, but every student has their schedule with the necessary requirements for graduation, and we're ready to go for Monday. In the meantime, our counselors, Mr. Chanowski and Mrs. Prince, will work with any requests and or changes that students have. Next, once school starts, students will be submitting their work mostly through Google Classroom. There are a couple other subject-specific means of submitting work. For for example, through like Test Wizard for some of our science classes, or through Digital Notebook or Blackboard, etc. Regarding attendance, teachers are required to take daily attendance every period using our school tool management system, like Mr. Cabello said. We receive the daily attendance updates and reports. So if there's any academic, or excuse me, attendance concerns, our teachers and counselors and myself will follow up with these families to address any of these specific concerns. What else? So some of the platforms similar to the middle school and even the elementary school. So we use Google Classroom with document cameras. We use Test Wizards, like I just said, for our science classes. Thinking like Project Lead the Way too, they use Onshape, which is a 3D modeling software. We use IXL and use ELA at the high school, and so much more. As far as like a day in the life as a student remotely, again, it's going to be very similar every single school day. Every student is going to log in every morning at 9 a.m. for their homeroom teacher for our check-in and connect period. During this time, like the others have shared, that teachers are going to have the opportunity to check in on any students who are struggling and or allow for student-to-student and teacher-to-student interactions. Students will then follow their 9-period schedule. And again, this has been said already, but I'll just say it one last time, where students are going to log into that particular class and receive that 15 to 20 minutes of that direct instruction. And that then the remainder of that period will be utilized to gradually releasing those students for, at the high school, like independent work or assessment of skills. But teachers will be remaining present throughout the period to support those students. Teachers' assignments have been set. Every teacher knows their schedule and what they're teaching for this school year. As Mr. Cabello had shared, similar, was there a question? So orientation for the high school, there's going to be a 9th grade orientation with our 9th grade teachers and our connection crew. I think I shared last time, our connection crew is a group of senior student leaders. And this will take place on Thursday, September 10th at 8:15 in the morning. That communication went out last week. I sent out another reminder this morning. As Mr. Cabello had shared, we're also going to be providing a school-wide assembly to review our expectations with all of our students next week during our homeroom and check and connect period. Similar to the other schools, as far as the parent communication piece is concerned, parents at the high school can expect and utilize Parent Portal as their primary communication tool to have that constant beat on how their child is progressing in each of their classes. We spoke today with our staff that if there's any changes in student performance, teachers are absolutely going to reach out to those parents and set up team meetings, and if necessary, devise a plan to better support those struggling students. So some of the student expectations during our remote learning will be that they are expected to attend each class virtually in its entirety, starting at 9 a.m. They will be utilizing their computer camera for classroom participation and engagement. Students will participate in all classroom discussions and be ready to answer any teacher questions. Students will complete and submit their assignments. And obviously the expectation for the use of the technology, similar to it's outlined in our district acceptable user policy, is expected to be adhered to. I met again with our staff, as our other principals did today, in terms of their teacher expectations. The classroom teachers will continue to provide students with daily lessons and activities in all instructional areas, following that prescribed schedule. Again, not to be repetitive, but I just think it's important to understand as well at the high school that teachers will be utilizing that first 15 to 20 minutes to instruct students directly with their content area, or within their content area, excuse me. And then that remainder of the period will be utilized to gradually release students again for that independent work or assessment of skills. And again, it's really important to understand that those teachers are going to be remaining present throughout that entire period to provide the necessary support. Every teacher is assigned a homeroom and connect and check-in and connect periods. Again, they're going to have that opportunity to provide that extra support and or just this social emotional check-ins. Teachers will strategically design all their instruction to account for all the needs for our diverse learners. And they will absolutely make additional opportunities to virtually meet with students in smaller groups for remediation, either through our WIN periods or during their office hour slots. Lastly, the distribution of our textbooks and learning materials. For our ninth graders, they're going to exchange their old Chromebooks with their new Chromebooks tomorrow, as well as pick up their learning materials between 1 and 3. I've communicated to our families, if this time frame does not work, all they need to do is contact the main office and we'll set up a convenient time. As far as our 10th, 11th, and 12th graders, pickup for them is going to be scheduled this Friday, September 11th, between 1 and 3 o'clock. Similar communication went out today. Same thing, if that time frame doesn't work, they could contact the main office and we'll make the necessary arrangements. So I know I went pretty quickly, but I just wanted to hit all those bullet points. And if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
So Rick,
No,
can
go
you,
ahead, Rick.
can you talk about the portal? I mean, if I had a student in the high school, can I go in, I see, you know, I pull up my son or daughter's, whatever. I see the classes they're in.
Yeah.
I see if they're late or behind on assignments. Does it also take them or take me to, you know, if I wanted to rewatch last Friday's lecture from biology, and I'm signed up for biology, you know, does it allow the student to basically navigate through their curriculum, I guess you would call it, you know, look at the library system of where all these videos are kept or the recordings of classes are kept? Does the portal do that for them, or are we sort of going to have a multi-system approach?
No, Parent Portal does not provide that. I think you're referring to Google Classroom. That's where all of the instructional resources are embedded in the students' specific content classes. As far as the communication or knowledge for a parent, in School Tool, as long as you have Parent Portal, and if those parents out there do not, all they need to do is contact the main office, and Mrs. Mattis or Mrs. Kasek will get them up and running. But a parent has the ability to go into School Tool and click on the assignments tab, and they will see for all of their classes, all their contact classes, if they're in Algebra 1 or Bio or Spanish, whatever the classes are, they will see a running tally, if you will, of all of the assessments that have been administered and scored for each particular assignment.
And things like attendance as well, Rick? I mean,
Yeah,
can they see-
attendance, discipline, all of those are embedded in School Tool as well, yes.
So if they're bailing, you know, they watch the first 2 classes and then they bail out for 2, the parent will be able to see that they weren't in 3rd period math.
Yeah, so as I shared, that's kind of twofold. Yes, the answer to your question is a quick yes. But in addition, so if a student is absent in that class, then they'll get a robocall in terms of the automated phone call in terms of reporting their absence if they're absent in more than 2 classes.
Okay. And can they make those up? Like if they go watch the video later, can they make that class up or no?
So if it's a legitimate illness and if it's a matter of where a classroom teacher could use an office hour time slot and catch them up, yes. If there's extended absences or if they're just not showing up for whatever reason, then that may result in a loss of credit and then they might have to make up that time.
But they would have to actually have why couldn't they just watch I mean, assuming they, you know, aren't completely lost. If they just pull up the video of Thursday's biology class, can't they watch it beginning to end?
So as long as the teachers record that synchronous lesson, yes.
Are teachers recording? That was going to be my question. Are they recording classes, or is it kind of one here and one there?
So I don't know if we landed on a district decision there. I don't know if,
Yeah, so at this point, there's no set that they are or aren't recording. What I can tell you is that some teachers are choosing to do that so that it is backlogged in their Google Classroom for the exact reasons that you're speaking about. But in cases where that's not the case, a lot of times teachers, just similar to how if a student was absent from their in-person instruction, they would meet with them at those other times to catch them up and let them know there may be other supplemental work that they may provide or information that they may provide in order for them to be able to get the same content. But as of right now, it's not necessarily both. As students, even if we go to the hybrid, students will be provided instruction on either, right, currently we're all remote right now, but when we go to the hybrid, students will be provided with instruction on either platform.
But what would be the reason for them not recording it? I mean, you know,
Probably some of the things that you had mentioned earlier, or the fear of some of those things, and also that there's just some people are more comfortable with the idea of that. What we had talked about is even recording just like the smartboard screen with their voice, not even having to get into the worry of the possibility of seeing any of the students in their classroom when we do get to hybrid model. There's a variety of reasons why people may not feel comfortable. I think that there is, on the part of some folks, I think that there is a real fear that the more that they put recorded and archived, the less and less need for teachers to exist in the future.
Rick, Steve had mentioned it as far as the homework goes. Is that kind of a district kind of conversation with the teachers? Hey, look, we're keeping them on the computers for all day long. Let's try to limit because the homework's not writing, it'll be right back on the computer. So, and I know that's a lot of parents are concerned about that. So I know Steve had mentioned it, but is that kind of like a district-wide discussion with teachers?
Yeah, we also addressed that today in our faculty meeting, yes.
Okay.
Well, and the real irony of that we discussed, I know in my faculty meeting as well, and it's been one administratively, but it's almost ironic to say homework, considering our students are via distance and all their work is at home. So, I think as much as the traditional homework that we see in our heads is very different than the one I think we're talking about. So when I said, that we're going to be surgical with our decisions and very precise in what we choose to teach and then what we choose to assess, both formatively or even more formally, I think the big thing for all of our teachers is that we're being cognizant of not only the amount of time students are spending in front of a screen, but also the way in which they're balancing this time at home, which we know can be very challenging for many students. So that's been a big conversation administratively throughout.
You had mentioned as far as when you miss a class. Now the parents won't get alerts necessarily, right? They're not set up that way. You won't get like an email alert that you missed a class. You'd have to log in to see that they missed the class.
Right, and you wouldn't necessarily get a live alert in real time with students in person either. So it's going to be after they've missed a certain amount of the day that you're going to get that information. It's not going to be the second your child doesn't sign into second period and attendance is recorded. Now, I will say that the staff in our building's pretty good at getting on top of those phone calls right away if kids don't come into school. But it's not synchronous in that way where if a student doesn't show up for first period or shows up for first and then not for second, where there's an automated phone call going home. But there is at the high school, like a Mrs. Mattis phone call or a Mrs. Monahan at the middle school phone call going home.
Yeah, I wasn't even meaning as far as a phone call. I mean, I would think Google Classroom would have something just because technology, and maybe Elliot can answer, it's built into the system, whereas if your name wasn't checked by the end of by the next period, you're getting an email sent to the parent. I don't know if that's possible. I know that's different in the actual real world when they're showing it. But I would think it could be an automated process. That's why I asked.
There is a process, Chris, and we are working on it. I'll get into it when I talk a little bit more about the connectivity piece in terms of what we're exploring and when it'll be ready.
Okay.
And I'd like to just a quick step back to that recording thing. I mean, any college you go to, all the lectures are recorded, all of the, and they're out there for the entire semester. In fact, some of them leave them out. I really would like to give our teachers a chance to I really don't like Google taking my, all my work and public. I really don't like this. And see if there's not a way to work around that, because I think we're missing a huge opportunity to let students, even if they're there, to let them go back and rewatch it and say, oh, I got it. I just think we're missing a huge opportunity. And I get it. I mean, I don't trust anyone on the internet, especially with assets and research. But if there's a way for us to provide a more secure platform, we should really look into it and understand what teachers are worried about.
Yeah, and many teachers have and, do in a flipped classroom model where they're recording their lessons, and that is sort of the students' quote unquote homework. And when they come in, they're having that really rich discussion and engagement while the teacher is there to mediate that process. So many teachers have long before COVID done exactly what you're saying, Perry. But now I think that there is a different climate and there's a different set of worries that some teachers are really feeling.
I understand worries, but Laura, do you know if State Teachers Association has any position on recorded?
Yeah, I was going to just interject with that. There are some concerns on the NYSET end, asynchronous, synchronous recordings. So it's really a conversation with our MTA and working through it. So it's a lot of conversation. Thank you for bringing that up, Howard.
Sure.
Because even with Zoom, there was pushback for a while until it was 2D approved. So slowly over time, we know that in person and being with your teacher cannot replace any remote. So
Correct.
we always want to make sure that we're loud and clear about the importance of teachers being here with our students. But during this time, there are options that we have to explore, and they will be uncomfortable, but I think it's all around conversation and working through it slowly and strategically. And like
together.
Caroline said, there are those who are exploring it and doing it, and maybe they're the trailblazers, and some will just follow, watch and follow and learn. So everybody's different when they come to the educational table and where their comfort zone is. So
I think too, you take away the natural environment, and this is what I've read as far as just parents criticizing how they teach. They discipline a kid, and now every parent gets to watch it that night. So I understand those, but I do think it's really important to have that. Just as a parent, your kid's confused, and all right, well, let me hop on and watch 15, 20 minutes and see if I understand it. So there must be a balance somewhere between it, but I understand where the hesitation is.
Well, and if you think about it, I mean, when we go back, please, to everybody's in a classroom and the teacher's there and it's like back to the normal, there's still no reason why they couldn't record those sessions and make it available to a student to rewatch it at night, or to a student and parent that want to sit down and go through it. I think if some of this stuff, this is a real opportunity for us to move forward into the 21st century with, but we've got to figure out where the holes are. Because you're right. I mean, there's going to be people that don't want, when there's a picture of their child on the screen and the teacher says the name, you don't want that going out. So maybe it's a matter of, having a redacting function that takes some of that stuff out. But we should understand it and not just sort of give up because, people think that this stuff's going to get stolen, or stuff's going to be modified, or their kids are going to be out on the internet, whatever.
Yeah. And I think with some of the flipped classroom that I was talking about, Chris, to your point, some of that is pre-recorded to take a lot of those concerns out of that. So just the teacher doing the lesson, sort of a run through on their own with their smartboard kind of thing, that is what is recorded. And then the work is done with the students in person, sort of that like gradual release that we've been talking about, where the teacher can kind of mediate that process. That's sort of the other model, which I think takes a lot of those worries away.
Do they during the 15 to 20 minutes of study or of the teaching, will teachers be taking questions, or is it more of just here's 15 to 20 minutes and then we'll ask questions after?
Yeah, I think it's definitely going to be that two-way communication. It's not going to be something where I'm talking right now. It's going to be similar to how it would exist in the classroom, where the teacher is providing that direct instruction, so to speak, where it might be the new information of the day, not really to exceed a long period of time, longer than 15 minutes, because we really can't expect students to take in that much new information without sort of having an opportunity to work through some of that. So that's where that gradual release towards independence, that assessment of what they've just learned and how they're grasping it, is going to be really important. But certainly I think that first 15 minutes is going to be similar to how it would exist in the classroom, with a two-way dialogue, so students can ask questions live in the moment as it's being presented if they're having a misunderstanding.
Okay. I only asked because if there wasn't that interaction as much, then it would be the same thing as a pre-recorded, for 15 to 20 minutes. That's why I asked. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
May I ask, are you going to address code of conduct at all, or can I ask now?
You can ask now.
Okay. So there's no building around here, around kids with the remote, of course, besides their home. So the code of conduct, you have language, there's all kinds of things, appropriate body gestures, dress code, even attending out of the home. You could be outdoors, you could be at a pizza parlor, perhaps. I don't know. I'm wondering, there's no in-school suspensions, there's no out-of-school suspensions, I guess. No going to the principal office. So how does one deal with this?
Well, I think those things just look very differently, right? So there's still going to be interventions from the counselors, the psychologists, the principals. They just don't look the same. So it's not to say that Mr. Cabello or one of the other principals couldn't set up a meeting with a child and a parent. And these things did happen in the springtime, where an intervention might look like something where a guidance counselor is meeting with a student, and then Mr. Cabello might be meeting with the student. So these things do happen. They just look differently. They don't take place in the physical brick and mortar principal's office, but they may take place online. The expectations are that students are going to behave, that they're going to follow the code of conduct, that they're going to exercise the appropriate use of our technology even when they're at home, right? So all of those things, we can't just say that and then not respond if they don't do that. So there has to be that follow-up with school staff if those things are not happening. So they will look differently. Those interventions will look very differently.
Right, so right now we have a very prescribed, you do this action, if that fails, then you do this action, and we don't have that for remote, correct? There's no model for remote.
I think we do have that, and I think it's what I just described. So when we're talking about them being in school suspension or out of school suspension, well, no students are in the building right now, but that doesn't mean that if something was so egregious that we wouldn't have to provide them alternate learning and have them suspended from typical school activities.
I would also say, if I can jump in, that I think this is a lot of the work of the administration that often goes unseen Monday through Friday. I think that even though you may not see a traditional suspension in school or out of school based on infractions, I think that in our buildings on a day in, day out basis, we're constantly using not only progressive discipline, but we're using different things along the way before we ever get to some of these punitive measures. We have definitely, as an administrative team, identified correcting of behaviors and mediations and sitting down and making contracts and helping students to understand that their actions have, they have things that happen that bring them there. So we do a lot day in, day out that leads well before we ever get to any of those punitive measures, because more often than not, those punitive measures are our last resort, unless, of course, it's something that's very egregious and very obvious, cut and dry, particularly in dealing with safety. But this is the work we do always. So I think this is just going to continue from a distance as well.
So are you going to give the teachers a set of tools that, kid comes on with a hat that says something beautiful on it, that the teacher can blank them out, or the, kid hands in an assignment and another student hands in their assignment and they happen to look exactly the same, even with papers that, you can look for content and those things. Are the teachers going to have a set of tools that they can use? Are they going to get trained on how to use them to find these unique situations that are because we have remote and hybrid capabilities?
Yeah, and some of that is stuff that we already have, like the turnitin.com. We have an account that exactly what you're saying. If students submit written work, you can actually compare them very easily when you're using that app. So those things, some of that we do have already. Some of it the teachers are very equipped to deal with. They deal with it in their classrooms already. So some of it is not going to be that atypical from the things that they're dealing with, but in terms of blurring and whatnot, that would have to be something that we would have to take Elliot's leadership for that.
Okay.
Blurring out inappropriate hats and whatnot.
Yeah, and I don't know that there's a censorship tool in Google. The quick action may just be to turn off the video feed until we can address something, a little bit more pointed. But to my knowledge, there's nothing in the suite that allows for that at this time.
You could always put Steve on a bus and send him to the house.
And that is not something we don't do as well sometimes. Maybe not on the bus, but we do also do home visits on occasion.
Yeah.
So is there an expectation that they are at home, or it's more flexible than that?
No, I don't think we can really dictate that they be at home because some families don't have supervision for students at home. So, I think that we have to appreciate that a child is signing in from wherever it is that they are able to sign in with the support of an adult in a supervised location. That's what we want. That's the safest for that student.
Okay.
So they could be outside, they could be any place, almost.
Well, they could be, but if it's interrupting their ability to benefit from instruction, we're going to have those interventions in place where we're going to be contacting the family and letting them know, like, their internet's very spotty because they're outside. They really need to find a location within the home. And some of that is really working with the families, working with the students, especially those that are a little more independent aged, to find that good, like, working location at home, set up that little home office where is in a quieter part of their living arrangement or, their daily arrangement where they can kind of focus as best that they can with, not too much clutter. We go through all of that with them. We do try and talk to them about that kind of stuff, just good work habits in general.
Okay.
Will the individual teacher be able to shut off an individual student if necessary?
Yes.
Okay.
All right. Any other questions for Steve or Rick, or we'll move to Tom?
All right, great. Apparently somebody shut me off earlier. I'm sorry. But I wanted to start with a quick shout out to our, it's funny, this time of year, we walk into a building that's really beautifully cleaned, that's ready to go from day one. And so our summer crew, maintenance and cleaners, they did a great job again this year. I always get excited by that when this morning when I walked in, it was great. And then we had a couple of activities that we were able to utilize some of their work that they did with regard to the temperature check and social distancing, the spacing lines that they put out and so on. And Alden's faculty meeting this morning was in our all-purpose room where the guys have put down 88 spots of tape, marked 6 feet out or across, and so on. And they were socially distanced at lunch tables, the teachers, throughout that meeting, and chose to stay in there for some grade level time. And then we had talked about building some comfort, building some understanding about what the students might feel like when they entered that kind of a setting. And they had already been in their classrooms, and I don't care how many pictures you take of the classrooms until you actually walk into that setting and see 11 desks and your desk all shoved off to the back side of the room. It's a shock. And so when when they sat in that setting and we were talking about how they feel with each other, you know, the comfort level and so on, we were talking about that one of the recommendations for eating lunch is that you go out and eat lunch in your car so you can be socially distanced. But then one of the teachers just spoke right up and said, we should eat in here, because the all-purpose room was all set up and socially distanced, and it was great. So we had a nice start to our day as well. Mike Sotero mentioned all the different schedule aspects that we have. One thing that we did talk about with regard to the schedule doesn't really apply to the students as much, but it's the front loading that teacher collaboration period. Alden Place hasn't had an option to do that, or we haven't done that. We only had like 15 minutes to get ready for a class and jump in. Now it looks like we have 40 to 45 minutes to get ready in the morning and prep for the day. And it also gives us a chance. I know we talked about substitutes before, just briefly, and our substitutes would be easier to find if we have some more time, and that'll help us all out with identifying some substitutes that would come in. As I look at the schedule, the one big change for Alden Place is that we are departmentalizing our grade levels this year. And so as I look at a schedule in the life of a student type thing, just like Mike said, we have 3 core classes in the morning. They're rotated among the staff, and then another core class in the afternoon. And so what it would look like, and I'll say if, as a 3rd grader, so I would start out with the ELA morning meeting, and then the class or the small group breakout, then writing, and then math in the morning. So in 3rd grade, might start out with Mrs. Carey teaching ELA, and then writing again, Mrs. Carey again, math later on with Mrs. Gonzalez, and then in the afternoon, the science social studies block with Mrs. Gonzalez again. And so that's the model we're following through the 3 different grade levels. In the 3rd grade, we only have the 2 teachers, so then it's split between 2. And then in the 4th and 5th grade, we have 3 teachers, and they're splitting it with 1 teacher taking math, 1 teaching reading, 1 teaching science social studies combo, and then all are teaching writing, same way in 5th grade. And so that's the breakdown for that. I'm excited also by the WIN period. We call it, we just put everything on that line. So WIN, Check and Connect, AIS, resource, so on. But that's where our teachers will have office hours, and that'll be the time where they schedule students to come and work with them one-on-one for assessment purposes and for extra help. I think they'll be busy across the board with that. Trying to think of something else with regard to schedules that came up. That's all I guess I have for schedules that I would add to what Mike said earlier. We worked pretty hard on that type of schedule for each grade level, K through 5. Teacher assignments, obviously just as repetitious if I repeat all the Google Classroom type things, but one thing that Rick mentioned just briefly was the online programs, and IXL and Extra Math in the elementary world are programs that will keep track of the student work on the program that's online. And that's a plus for us. I think SRI might do that as well. So they'll have a login and it keeps track of them as they progress with those subjects. One big change for us is attendance. And if I go down to the attendance phase, or why that's a change for us, we had only taken attendance at Alden Place once during the day. So they were marked present for the day. If they came in at 9 o'clock and left at 9:45, they were present for the day in the old days. We're doing period attendance across the board. It'll be on School Tool as well. We have some parents asking, and I put it out in our summer mailing about Parent Portal. parent portal for us is mostly a check on that attendance aspect and also the schedules the students have, who they have the class with type thing. We have to work on the grading aspect of that, the parent portal. So again, a change for us. And I thought it might be a discussion topic. I think teachers embraced that this morning. They thought that was a plus for us. The platforms being used, there are a bunch of them. Most of them were mentioned, but I think the ones that really excite teachers, I think, are the Screencastify, IXL, the Epic Books came up, Newsy LA, those types of programs. They use Learning A to Z and BrainPop. We did get talking about classroom tools because of what we'll be sending home with the kids. And one of the tools that came up that we hadn't thought of is sending home whiteboards to all the families. So we'll be sending whiteboards and some markers home for those for math purposes, really for any purpose, for writing as well. And orientation wise, just want to go that direction, I guess. So we've had mailings, we have Chromebook pickup planned, and at the same time, when we do the Chromebook pickup, we'll do the we'll hand out our go bag, I guess, for third grade. We'll have some orientation activities that they've done in the past. And so we're setting up stations outside, kind of like what we did for moving up. And so we'll use our tents. So if you're wondering where the tents fit in, we'll get out our easy ups and go that direction. We're planning a virtual walkthrough and likely be followed up by virtual expectations with regard to remote learning. And some of the expectations. So it was funny because I thought, where did we get those expectations from? And I'm going through papers last night, and it's always the last place you look, but at a meeting on August 5th, the administrators wrote out a whole bunch of them. And so Mike, you weren't around it on August 5th, but so the ones that I thought were important to us are the synchronous instruction, live or video, and/or video. The principal in the co-teacher Google Classrooms, that was happening last spring already. And it was good. It was good for, it worked well for us. That teachers will have regular office hours. I think that's an important step. They'll have regular schedule to follow. And one thing about the second part of the period for the workshop model is that the second part of the period, I have an expectation the teachers will leave their computers on the rest of that period in case, not for those people that want to check back with them. And so while the students will go off and do their independent work, if a student has a problem or wants to do a quick check, hey, am I doing this right? They can come back on and visit with that teacher during the period. So that's an important one for us as well. We're doing a regular grading and going to the normal report card model, and that's important. Large group to small group is important. These are all important expectations. And group and individual assessments. So I think it's important that we do our ELA assessments and reading levels and so on, and continue that model because it's been effective. We're getting better at it, and I don't want to backtrack at this point. We have to know where the kids stand coming into our program this year. As far as, let's see, I think I already talked about distribution with the whiteboards and so on, Chromebooks. Right now we have third grade and new people scheduled for Friday for that type of thing. We also have some, we have to figure out what to do with fourth and fifth grade. I don't know why it went over my head, but that's one of the hurdles I have to get by is how do I get the fourth grade materials and the fifth grade materials out decently. So we do have a workbook in math. We have a planner. It's funny, the planner, this is the first year that I've ever ordered the planner, gotten it all ready in early June. And it was ordered, it's not in yet. So a lot of our orders that we put out in the summer, even WB Mason has been very slow at getting our materials in whole yet. We're waiting. So, any questions about Alden Place?
No, I did have one general question that whoever can answer. And it's kind of forward looking, but I think a lot of people had this question. So when they receive the schedule, they receive schedules for the students for the whole entire year. Now, is it our intention moving forward that, and I know it was said before, but it doesn't really quite fit, as we move out of remote and hopefully soon enough into hybrid, are we keeping those schedules intact? I know it's probably a yet to be seen, but the times don't line up, but that's the hope. Okay, I'll leave it at that. I know it's not the time for it, but.
Well, I just would say one thing is that I think in the, I know that in the hybrid and remote model, they will stay the same basic schedule. When we go back to a regular, if we ever get back to a regular model, then we will likely adjust some.
No, that's fine. My kids asked and I've heard other parents ask, so I figured I'd throw it out there.
Here's a sort of just a pain in the whatever question. Are all these programs that we're talking about, are we going to end up with a single system or single sign-on, or are we going to have, kids with 5 and 6 passwords to get in IXL and to get into the portal and to get into Google Classroom, Zoom, Zoom meeting numbers? I mean, it seems like unless we've sort of invested in something that can just sort of provide that single layer of authentication, we could be it could be a nightmare of keeping track of, on top of all the other passwords and things you have in your life.
So yeah, as the guy who probably has more passwords than anybody in the room, that's challenging. But and the short answer is we don't subscribe to a password management system per se, but we are trying to focus our energies to those applications and add-ons that are inherent to or associated with the Google suite. So one of the things that Kirsten's looking into is finding or analyzing the requests for software platforms and looking at Google extensions or Google add-ons that may meet those needs and keep everything in the same arena, because not only does it ease access and passwords and things like that, but it also leans into our built-in security protocols as well. So we do want to keep everything in the Google house as much as possible for many reasons, one of which is ease of access.
Elliot, do the Chromebooks give you an option to save the username and password when you sign into one of those? So when you go back,
the Chrome browser does, yes. Chrome has a built-in password management feature.
And I would add that teachers put a button in there for like IXL. Well, it won't be, I don't know about IXL, but for extra math, they put a button in there that the students on the Google Classroom just hit the button and then they go right directly to extra math. So it's not like they have to look it up in the browser and find it. It's right there.
Okay. All right. Any other questions for any of the principals or anybody in general?
I do.
Oh, go ahead, Claudia.
I do. The question I have is, I don't know if it's for Laura or for Caroline, is can you just explain to the parents out there again what Parent Portal is and who it's for? Because I know that the Parent Portal, is, well, I'm not going to answer it, but if you guys could just explain like who's can access it, like I know 6th grade, 6th to 12th grade is different than what somebody from Alden and somebody from Elm can look at. So can you just clarify that for the parents?
Yeah, so School Tool is our student management system, a student information system where it has all of the attendance, discipline, and scheduling information as well as grading. So it's going to be anything that is verified and has been locked for reporting purposes. So there is a a daily function with attendance that does that. It goes, once the daily attendance period happens, then it will compare attendance, and that will be viewable once grades are submitted and quote unquote exported for viewing. That will be on there. And that's for like the quarterly grades, but I think Mr. Sape explained a little bit of the day-to-day assignment type grading that the teachers manage based on what they put in their grade books, what they allow to be out there ready for view. So if I assign an essay, it's due Thursday. That essay will be populated in my grade book as soon as I put it there, and that becomes an expectation based on the due date, and it will be there listed for parents. So basically, the information that is there is based on what we as schools, and I say schools because it may vary throughout the levels, what we enter into that system. So you can find scheduling information, you can find attendance information, you can find your students' discipline information, and if the teacher uses that grade book, the school tool grade book, you'll also be able to find the running list of their assignments if you have the parent portal. If you are not signed up for parent portal and want to, the best way to get the information about what you need to do to be able to sign in and access parent portal is to contact your child's main office in the school that they attend. And once you're on there, so if you have multiple students in multiple buildings, once you're on there, any students that are linked to your child, so if you have, 3 children across the grade levels, those linked children that you have access and viewing rights to will also be part of your parent portal account. So you don't have to go to the middle school and the high school to access all of your children. Once you have that authenticated login, you'll be able to do that and see all of your students that are linked to you.
So is that something that we can put like a small tutorial or, a video on YouTube to show parents how to, like, especially new parents to the district, how to use that thing and navigate it and all that?
How to navigate it? Sure, we can have that, but in order to access it, we actually have to have picture ID because we need to verify that you are who you say you are and that you actually have the rights to access that child. So that's why you need to contact the main offices directly, because we wouldn't want to erroneously give someone access to a student's, basically, their attendance record, demographic information, all of that stuff without it being the correct person.
But Caroline, the information that's on for let's say a 4th grader in there is not going to be the same as what an 8th grader is going to get. As far as I don't know, are they the same? Will they be the same? I don't remember if they were the same. I thought it was much less in the lower grades than it is in the higher grades.
And it's going to depend on exactly. So like Mr. Lipka said before, Alden previously had only taken attendance once a day, whereas the secondary schools use a period by period attendance system. Because we are in this remote environment, we're using period by period attendance throughout. So you'll be able to see that now, because now that's the system and format that they have in those lower grades as well. So you'll be able to see more detailed information. If teachers have their grade books there and it's set for the building to be able to see the assignments, you'll be able to see those assignments.
And is this something that all the teachers are gonna, like, it's not gonna be just a few teachers doing it? Either it's all or none, or is it gonna be up to the teacher? Oh, where'd you go? Or is it up to the teacher? Is it required by the principals and by the superintendent, or is it not?
It's required.
Is what required?
Is the requirement for using this, for putting grades in, for using this tool? The teachers, is it like it's required that all the teachers have to use this? They have to put the attendance in. Everybody has to do this.
Yes, everybody has to maintain attendance. Absolutely. As far as their grades, they do maintain a grade book in School Tool, but I'm not sure that how regularly some people keep it up to date. So we're going to need to work on that more consistently, as it is across grade levels now.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay, so I think last is, are there any questions specific around technology for Elliot or any of the team before we move on?
Do we
Elliot,
know, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, John. No, go ahead, John.
Do we know, Elliot, when we're nearing capacity or over capacity with any of our delivery? Well, I guess remote, everybody's kind of home, but.
Could you be more specific, John? Capacity in terms of what?
Well, I'm not sure how much of the school network is being used for remote. Probably very little, right?
Okay, so we're talking about broadband capacity. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay, so we're still in the trial and error phase, right? Everything that I have is theoretical estimation at this point. Working with our principals and looking at the master schedules across all 4 schools, we've estimated that we're going to peak at about 80% of our additional broadband capacity in terms of when everybody's logged in and teaching at the same time synchronously, assuming they're all teaching from campus, which we know is not going to necessarily be the case.
You're talking about hybrid, or you're talking about remote?
I'm talking about remote. I'm talking about assuming that every one of our classes that's happening in a synchronous environment is happening from campus, reaching out to children at home. So that would be the heaviest load on our network. And by my preliminary estimation, I'm looking at roughly 80% capacity. If the board would allow me to just throw a quick image up on the screen, I can show you that there's and I'm going to specifically chop this because there is some identifiable information there. But I just wanted to share that we have a tool available to us that is, can you just get it up? Okay, unfortunately, I can't share it without marring the information, but there's a dashboard tool available that shows us how many meetings are in progress, what the broadband consumption is, and if there's any lag on any of those meetings. So I'll be able to monitor in real time as we kick off on Monday what our network congestion looks like, what our broadband capacity looks like. And, there's things that we can do to make recommendations. So for example, if we're seeing that we're kind of pegging the needle on broadband, we can recommend that teachers that are not actively engaging with students request that the cameras be shut off for a period of time. There may only be certain periods during the day. Maybe third period is just congested because we have all 4 buildings active, for example. In which case we can make those recommendations. So we have them in our pocket. Obviously, we want to have everybody as actively engaged as possible. So I don't want to put that out preemptively, but we are sitting on a couple of ideas to reduce broadband if we need to. But right now we're estimating that we're going to max out at about 80–85%, which should be manageable given the data we have available.
Okay, and if that happened, would there be, well, you have mitigation ideas, would purchases of additional capacity be, broadband capacity be?
Within reason, I think what I would like to do is reduce unnecessary simultaneous consumption. So that might mean a shift in how we manage office practices, further restricting non-critical software utilization during those critical peak times. Again, we don't anticipate an all-day logjam, if you will. If anything, it'll be spikes that'll happen when all of our teachers are live. I mean, I think in our master schedule, there's roughly, I'd say 40 to 60% of the time that's going to be not fully encumbered by all staff. So it's going to be isolated incidents that we'll treat accordingly.
Okay, and of course, you can look at consumption over time with reports and stuff, graphs, right?
Yep, I'm looking at right now. I can tell you that over the last 6 months, our average duration of Google Meet sessions has been 34 minutes. We've had 491 meetings total. There's only been 2% of network congestion in that time. So granted, we haven't been going live from classrooms across the district, but these numbers are very favorable. And we would hope that when we go full live sessions on Monday, that we're not going to peg the needle as much as we might think.
Okay.
Elliot, to John's point, is it still possible to get more bandwidth if we need it? Can you purchase it?
Our purchase was done through Duchess BOCES with the support of their support vendors that manage our subscriptions. So I'm not going to say a hard no, but I don't know what it would involve to get there. And when we looked at the numbers that I presented to the board initially, they were based on countywide averages, and Millbrook is substantially below those estimations. So I'm thinking that we should be okay. But like I said, we're looking at all options to mitigate if necessary.
What is that total number, Elliot, of bandwidth?
So we had 200 megs. We increased it to 400. So our estimation of consumption is roughly 3 megs per Google Meet session. That's assuming that children and teacher are both streaming audio and video. That might peg to 3.2 if if the teacher's presenting a YouTube video where they're streaming video, the kids are streaming it on the receiving end. So what you do is you take the 200, you divide it by 91 classroom teachers. We further pared that number down to roughly 55 concurrent sessions or sections, given co-teaching and things of that nature, and master scheduling nuance. So we're looking at 55 times 3, which keeps us within the 400. So that's where we figure business as usual may take 150, and that doesn't account for any request to the staff to maybe pare down unnecessary broadband consumption. And I'll say that as a very general term because I don't want to be restrictive in the work environment. But we can certainly dial some things back if we needed to free up bandwidth for our kids.
We don't have any server issues.
No, we've been upgrading servers and switches since I got here in April. We had a project in progress with Duchess Bosse's and CSI, their support vendor, to upgrade 8 Cisco servers and switches. So we are keeping pace with our network infrastructure, and going into this broadband expanded capacity. We did look at all of our equipment and verify that it can service the increased traffic.
Okay, good.
And all of the students that need hotspots have them at this point, or?
That's a great question, Chris. So right now we have, and I want to thank our principals have done a great job of really just repeating the message. If you're having connectivity issues, please contact the help desk, please contact your building principal. They've done a great job relaying the message. So far we have, I want to say 6 students across 4 households that have made requests for assistance with Wi-Fi hotspots and broadband. We have a dozen devices available to us that have shipped, and we've received them. They're in inventory as of today. They're ready for distribution. I'll be working with the principals as we give out Chromebooks to identify these families and verify their needs. Again, theoretically, we looked at heat maps for Wi-Fi coverage in their respective areas. We asked for home addresses where the children are going to be at the time of their school hours. And we've been able to identify what we believe to be devices to meet their needs. Won't know for sure till next week, but that is part of the plan. And right now we do have enough devices to meet the requests in progress.
Okay. All right. Any other questions for any of our information participants?
I have one more question. Sorry. Who's in charge of because I believe it's more than one person, but who's in charge of the website, of the school's website? Like inputting information and data and stuff like that. Who does that?
We have multiple people involved. We have one of our employees in the business office does a lot of the work on the main district page, and each building has staff that have access to the building specific website. So there's sub pages within that they're able to access.
One of the things that we're going to want to create is some version of a webmaster position. So there's one person in charge. So all the information is getting updated in the same way. There's uniformity that's happening, and it doesn't just happen to fall to chance that something is getting updated the way that we need to. We're finding more and more that we're in a spot where, listen, communication is always important, right? But now we're really in a world where communication is important, and people need to be able to find things seamlessly. So we're talking about what that position may look like, and whether that may be a stipended position, but we need some uniformity to be able to get good information out to our folks on a regular basis.
100% agree with that, Brian. 100%.
And if I could add to that, one of the things that I did mention earlier that I would circle back to the parent communication piece. I think it was Chris that brought it up. So I did want to share that part of our upgrades to our website host, this Blackboard, is that we are building mobile applications through the Blackboard Mass Communications product. That's going to allow us to push information out in much easier and fluid ways to our families. They'll be able to download a Millbrook specific branded app from either the Apple iTunes or Android Google Play app stores. And that will allow for push notifications to their mobile devices. It will allow for content to be posted to the website and simultaneously pushed out to mobile users, also to text for email and social media users. So there's a lot of opportunity there as well. And hopefully that webmaster position would just be able to take on some of that management also, but making it seamless to push information out across platforms. Because as Brian said, it's critical to be able to send things out very quickly in as many different ways as possible to reach our community where they are.
Okay. All right, Cheryl, we got the next thing on the agenda is question and answer from the public. Are there any questions out there from the public?
Yeah, yep. So I have a few. So our first question is from Dawn Tompkins for middle school and high school. Are any student supply lists going out for middle and high schools? And will all teachers be using and posting on Parent Portal? In the past, not every teacher has participated in Parent Portal, and it makes it very difficult to know what is going on with your child and what has been done and what has not been done. It needs to be used by all teachers or no teachers at all. It's an all or nothing thing. If we're going to use this the way the Board of Ed and administration is saying, it's going to be used, because this is not the way it has been in the past. So anybody want to?
Rick, the supply list. There's a question about, are there supply lists that will be going out specific to your buildings?
Yep, so we actually met about this today. Our different grade level teams met to discuss supply lists. We wanted to be sensitive to families during all of this, and particularly with all our distance learning, utilizing our technology to the best of our ability to limit on some of those supplies. But we are finalizing those in the next few days, and those will be coming out via email and posted on the website.
Very similar at the high school. When I met with our staff today, we are generating all the things that we need to communicate to our families, and that will be sent out on Friday as well.
Thank you. And then, I mean, we heard the rest of it. I don't know if there was a question. We heard that. I think we're in very different circumstances right now than we have been in the past as well. So in terms of the assignments.
Okay.
So Carolyn, there will be uniformity?
Well, that'll be the expectations, but if teachers keep their grade books separate from school tool, that's the problem. We don't, as far as I know, don't have a policy where they have to keep their grade book in school tool. They have to report grades in school tool, but in terms of keeping a grade book in school tool, absent of a policy, we can require them to report grades there, but in terms of them keeping daily assignments or expectations specific to how frequently it's updated, that's going to be a challenge.
So what should parents do?
Well, that's why there's also a Google Classroom, and the Google Classroom is where the student's going to be getting the majority of their assignments live, and the grading system is school tool.
I mean, you know, given that this time, you know, in today's world, there isn't the option for a parent to stop in the class and sit down and, you know, I mean, why wouldn't we basically say the stuff needs to go in there? I mean, why either that or I don't know who that was that wrote that, but just get rid of it. If we're not going to do it consistently, then we shouldn't do it at all. Parents shouldn't look in school tool or the portal and go, oh, I don't see anything about my kid not going to school. Must be doing great. And then realize that nothing is being put in the school tool because they're in, you know, they have the wrong, they're not taking a class that's actually recorded there. You know, we can't have sort of do it any way you want. I mean, even for normal times, but especially now.
Yes, I mean, I understand what you're saying, but absent a policy that requires that, we have expectations, we have best practices, and if we don't have a policy other than they have to keep a grade book and they have to report their final grades in school tool, If there's not something specific that tells them how frequently they have to be updated, etc. I'm not disagreeing with you, but if that doesn't exist right now, then that's going to be something that we're going to need to work towards if we want consistency truly to
I think
exist.
We need to decide, do we want it or don't we? And if we don't, I mean, if it's not that big a deal, which I don't know if it is or not, but if it's not that big a deal, you know, that stuff is or isn't in there, then, you know, why have them put it in there at all? Because it's just going to be misleading.
It's a big deal. Speaking of it from a parent's point of view, it's a big deal. And it is frustrating sometimes when you know they took a test, you know, 3 days, 4 days, 5 days, and, you know, the kid's anxious to know what they got. And, you know, so, I mean, I guess one is how do we make it policy? And two, you know, who should the parents call to let them know that, you know, something's outdated? Should it be the teacher? Should it be the principal? You know, how should they address that?
Yeah, and I think exactly what you just said. I think if you have a concern about something that involves a teacher, I think that you should try to communicate with that teacher. And if there isn't a resolve there, then I think either guidance or the principal would be your next step for sure. But I definitely think that in a situation like that, I mean, it sounds like there's a need for uniformity. I do understand the importance of it. And I think that there are some folks that have a more contemporaneous log of their grades than others, and some keep it on paper and put final grades in. So if that's something that is going to be done and required, policies aren't made at the building level. Those are procedures or practices, you know, building expectations. But if we want uniformity, that's something that's going to have to exist in a conversation with the folks right here.
I agree with Chris. It is very important. It's also, you know, it's also a way to just check in with the students, you know, with your child to make sure, I mean, I know I did it, to make sure that homework is being handed in, you know, that what the grades are, how they're doing. You know, but not all teachers did it all the time. Sometimes it would go, you know, weeks or so by. And I know last year when we were in the remote session, you know, when we used the Google website, I mean, again, not all the teachers did it. And you were just like, okay, so now I got to send an email.
So why don't we, what does it take to get a policy built? I mean, it sounds like it doesn't need to be a, you know, 4,000 page documented policy. It can be a you know, an addendum, I would think. What does it take to get a policy in place that says whatever the right way to do it? If it's not school tool, the student portal, if it's something else, fine, but let's choose one and let's get it done. And then, you know, it doesn't go away when we come back to normal life or semi-normal life.
Well, like Caroline said, it's the people who are right here. We'll have a conversation and see where it takes us.
All right. So, I mean, maybe at the next board meeting, we can take a look at this policy. Okay. Anything else from anybody?
Yes.
Oh,
sorry. I have more questions if we're ready for that. These are mostly for Mike Sotero at this point. How many brain breaks can elementary students, especially kindergarten, expect during the day, and how lengthy will they be? And please explain what workshop model is for people who are not professional educators. And that was Heather LaVarnway.
So I think I'll start with workshop model because that might answer some of the brain breaks. So workshop model is this. Let's say that traditionally you had an hour set aside for reading, or let's say 45 minutes. And so one of the skills the teacher was going to teach is vowel teams, the sound that like two vowels make when they go together. So the teacher in a workshop model will have all the students together, whether it's remote, on camera, or in the room, all gathered around one central location. And she'll do some sort of activity or demonstration or show something in 5 to 10, sometimes 15 minutes, but the younger grades, smaller amounts of time, 5-10 minutes, about what she's trying to teach them. So like the sounds that those vowel teams make, or if she was trying to teach a skill about inferring, she would do some sort of demonstration or exercise in which she would model inferring. Then the students would infer back to her, or they would make the vowel sounds back to her, and then they'd actually put it into practice. That's like a 10-minute time period. At that point, there's a break, and it doesn't mean like it's a break in the action of the classroom. The instruction switches, and this is where the workshop model comes in. So we've demonstrated this thing for 10 minutes. Now we're going to go work, or for lack of a better word, coach students in small groups or even one-to-one groups around the room or in a remote setting, individual meetings or small group meetings remotely. It's much like coaching. If I had my baseball team in front of me, I'd talk about, swinging or the way you hit, like an inside pitch. And then, all right, everyone saw that, go to your separate tees. Now I'm going to spend the next half hour going to each tee and showing them how to do it. So that's like an explanation of workshop. Not about hitting. Steve's probably better at that than I am, but that's how the workshop model works. As for brain breaks, within the day, each grade level and teacher is going to set up their own personalized schedule. Once they orientate their class, they see the strengths of their class, how easy it is for them to toggle back and forth. So what we talked about earlier tonight is just a general guideline. There's going to be several breaks. We're not going to have students online from 9 to 11:40. There's going to be some downtime, especially in that transition from whole group instruction to small group instruction. I don't want to quantify it with a number and say, hey, everyone's got to have 5. Some days, some class might have 5, they might have 6. Another day they might have 3, but they might be 3 longer ones. It really depends on the work that's being done, what's related to projects, what's not. So it's pretty wide open. That being said, it is the focus of all of our staff K-5 to understand that we're not putting our young students online, for like 3 consecutive hours. There needs to be space. There needs to be differentiation of instruction, whole group, small group, and then time where there's not face-to-face and the students are working independently. And then time where they're not working and they're taking that break. I hope that answers it. Anybody else? Cheryl, you still there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay.
So
Something weird just happened on my screen. Okay, good.
yeah, I'm just reading off the screen. So
Okay.
Anything else, Cheryl?
I have one more that also is for you, Mike, and it's please shed some light on the Chromebook pickup process for kindergarten students that is planned for the first day of school. How long will it take? Is there anything else planned? Some of us have other young children who will need to be at home for their virtual learning, so it's challenging.
Sure. So right now, what we have scheduled for the first day is 3 different classes. We'll release this memo tomorrow, but essentially between 9 and 1, there's an hour block. It's Miss Bott from 9 to 10, Mr. Profi from 10:30 to 11:30, and Miss Stafford from 12 to 1. And during those times, they'll be at school outside disseminating out Chromebooks and the gifts that they have for students, doing a simple meet and greet. We totally understand that there are folks who they don't just have a kindergarten student. So in that situation, just simply reach out to the office and we'll make alternative arrangements. We'll still likely be able to provide that meet and greet experience as our 3 teachers are often in the building. So we understand that if you can't make it at that set time, we can make alternate arrangements.
Thanks, Mike. That's it from the public.
All right. Well, first of all, I wanted to say thank you to the 4 principals. You guys did a great job. I know it was sort of short notice asking you to prepare and be ready tonight, but you did a great job. And hopefully parents know a lot more now about what their sons and daughters are going to be seeing when they log on for the first time. And well, I guess good luck. So we, the next thing on the agenda is actions to be taken. No, executive session.
Yep.
Do we have a motion to go to executive session for proposed litigation in the employment history of particular persons?
So moved.
Thanks, Paul. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second.
All right. Any discussion? All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any against? Okay. What I'd like to do is start it like with probably 10 minutes of just the board, then just the board and Laura, and then we'll work our way through all the other issues or items or whatever you want to call them. Okay?
Perry, we're bringing in Beth Harris, so
Yep. We can do Beth. Let's see, 10, maybe 10:30. Do you think that's too late?
well, we're doing Beth and then we need Margot after Beth. So
Okay.
I just want to put that on your radar.
Okay. All right. Send us away.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Good night.
Take
Thank
care.
you,
Thank
guys.
you.
Good night.
Good luck with everything.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Good night, everybody. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah. Are you sending us, Cheryl?
I'm putting you in a breakout room.
Make this one longer than 60 seconds. If you could.
Wow.
I'll
Just-
try.
I'm just throwing that out there.
All right, I'll try. I'll do my best.
I did notice there's an item on the agenda is for us to adjourn.
I'll see how I feel about it at the end. Okay, you have 60 minutes.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Brian, Laura, and Caroline, just ignore what you have. Claudia, did you go into the breakout room?